What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Court Press. So, as you guys can see, there's no Ariel today. He's feeling a bit under the weather, so Ariel, feel better. But we are joined by Five on the Floor's very own, live tweeting today's game against Team Nigeria and most likely Team USA, the great Marco Romo. So, Marco, welcome.
What's up? Oh, man. Shout out to Ariel. Hope you're feeling better. Everybody out there who's watching, send your, good vibes over to the homie. He's all good. Absolutely. Don't worry. It's just, send the vibes.
Yeah, he'll be back next week, most likely, barring anything crazy, which we don't want. But anyways, we're also going to be joined by Alex Toledo at some point. So we have a good show today. We got a whole lot to talk about. We got NBA Finals. We got international ball, the exhibition games, and we have a little bit of, expounding analysis on what we heard on the latest Five on the Floor podcast, which you have not listened yet. Make sure you go ahead and listen to that. I'm going to go ahead and plug that real quick as we are an extension of Five on the Floor. But, Marco, the NBA Finals have been, in my opinion, really fun to watch. I think it's been a game of adjustments from game to game, not so much in-game, because neither of these two coaches, I think, are really good in-game adjusters. But from game to game, it's kind of been a little bit of a chess match. And right now, the Phoenix Suns are up 2-1. The Bucks got the last game 120-100, I believe. I think it was a 20-point game. So we haven't been able to talk about this series since it began. What are your general takeaways from the first two games? And then we'll get into game three.
The general takeaway I have is it's a make or miss league. And that's like it's like cliche to say, but you've watched the first three games of this series and it's almost gone that exact reason. Outside of the first one, really the Suns or the Bucks actually weren't shooting that well up until that stretch in the, I think, second quarter onto the fourth quarter where the Bucks started finally hitting their jumpers. Drew Holiday still got to quit shooting that step back. I know how much you hate that, Gad. He hit it once and he shot it like four more times and he bricked the next three, which is hilarious. But yeah, the games of adjustments, I love that kind of stuff. The chess matches that you see in the finals are like crazy how these coaches change stuff that throughout the regular season they weren't doing. The Bucks, they were a team that gave up the mid-range, and now they're doing a conscious decision to not give that up to Devin Booker or Chris Paul, and they're giving up open threes. They adjusted to that even. Now they're back to their old, we're not going to let you get the threes off, but the threes that we are letting you get off, we're getting off to the right people. And that's the kind of stuff I love about the finals. The type of mid-series adjustments are like awesome, especially when you come from Heat fans like us who watch Spoelstra, who is the best game-to-game adjust guy in the league. It's great to see.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. It has been a fun game of adjustments. We'll go to Alex here since he has just joined us. Alex, so we're talking about the first two games of the finals, or I guess just general takeaways from the beginning of the finals before we get into what the Bucks did in game three.
Well, honestly, general takeaways, a lot of it is kind of played out, I think, in a way that I think could have been expected. And not to say that it's been bad. I've enjoyed watching the matchup, man. It's been fun. Like, it's two teams who deserve to be here, who aren't teams that you necessarily see in the finals ever. But it's like a fun matchup to watch. I'm glad, Giannis is healthy and doing his thing out there because, there's no excuses. You could just see the two teams play out. And I picked the Suns to win just because I trust their shot creators, their guards to be, just incredible decision makers and being able to pick at the Bucks' different coverages and find the weak spots in their defense over and over and over. I've been a little bit skeptical about the Bucks' offensive consistency because outside of Giannis, you haven't really seen that. I still don't really trust a lot of their shooting outside of, let's say, Middleton and Bryn Forbes. And I know Gad talks about the Chris Middleton cycle. He's just not somebody who's going to give you his A performance game after game. That's not going to be the case with him. I'm still a little bit, I was skeptical about their shot creation in general, just because as much as I respect Drew Holiday, I think it's a whole, he's on a completely different level. He's completely outclassed by, I think, Chris Paul and even Booker when it comes to those two guys as shot creators and decision makers. So it's a fun series. Both teams are really good. I think the Suns are going to end up winning it in 6. But it's been good, man. I'm enjoying it.
So we're going straight into predictions here. That's crazy. Wow. So Suns in 6.
I had already said it on 5 on the floor, so I'm giving you the context there. I feel right about it.
No, I respect it. When we made our predictions on here about a week or so ago, we were operating under the idea that Giannis was not going to be 100%. And Giannis is more than 100% right now. This man is absolutely on a mission. He's looked absolutely dominant. And what's most impressive to me is we talked about it before the series. The Suns are the team that have the personnel to quote unquote build the wall. They have long, rangy, strong defenders to throw at Giannis, in addition to a really good shot deterrent in DeAndre Ayton. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like at this point, I feel like Giannis has gotten to the point where either it's Budenholzer moving him around or he just has enough counters, whether it's inside the three-point line or not. He has enough counters to the point where he can get what he wants at will. And I've found it really impressive just watching him going through these first 3 games, in addition to the shot making from the Suns, which is expected at this point. They're just great at what they do. But I think just Giannis being this unstoppable force in a bad matchup is just his growth has made me really happy for him. It's been really fun to watch as a basketball fan because you're waiting on someone to become that unstoppable force that just almost wills his team the distance every single year, kind of the way that LeBron has been. And Giannis, these playoffs has looked the part. And I didn't think he was going to look like this before the series, but he's looking fantastic. Marco, what do you think of Giannis in this series so far?
Yeah, the stuff you said about you think the Suns would have the personnel for that, similar to what the Heat had last year. And I think they even have better wing guys than that because they have Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson out at the 3 spot who can help a lot better than, Duncan Robinson did last year. But you also see the numbers that DeAndre Ayton's done a pretty good job on Giannis. I think somebody tweeted out the numbers. He's only, I think it was 18 for 48 or something like that. And against everybody else, he's like almost like 80% from the floor, like 26 for 28, something crazy like that. And he just bullies guys like Jay Crowder. They have no shot. Even last year, Jay Crowder did a good job of like making sure Giannis worked for all his points. And you see that from time to time. He still like makes him work, but you can't have Jay Crowder carry you like that. He can't be trying to go pound for pound with Giannis through like 3 quarters, especially when DeAndre Ayton got in foul trouble last game. It was curtains. And I'm going to get into this rant right now because I absolutely hate, and Seth Partnow also tweeted about this, and Dave Dufour, all these guys, we hate the coaches that foul out their own players when they're not guys that foul a lot. DeAndre Ayton only averaged, I think it was 2 fouls through the first 3 series. And I was like, he's not going to foul. And if he is going to foul, you're going to at least have him out there in case you might get blown out, which they did. So it didn't end up mattering. You save him for the 4th quarter, but he's not going to play in the 4th because it's a 20-point game at that point. So it really didn't make sense to me. I hate when coaches do that, especially in the playoffs where those fouls, the whistle gets tighter and the whistle, I guess they allow you to get more physical. And DeAndre Ayton, he has to be able to like play in that sort of space. So you got to get him through these growing pains while you're coaching him. You can't baby him at this point you're in the finals pretty much. You could have gone up 3-0. Even if you didn't, you at least would have tried all the cards on the table. So I absolutely hated that. But I'm glad that Giannis he saw that. He's like, okay, he's not going to play me as hard. He's going to play off of me a little bit differently. I'm not going to take these threes. I'm just going to go to the rim. I'm going to do whatever I want. And Giannis straight up took their lunch money. And it was pretty awesome to watch, actually.
So what I'm getting from what you just said is you didn't like the Frank Kaminsky minutes.
No. Justice better on that one for sure.
He was, I think, minus 13 in 5 minutes in the 3rd quarter, or 4 minutes in the 3rd quarter. It was that moment after the Cam Johnson run.
Minus 7 in 3 minutes.
Was that Frank Kaminsky?
Yeah.
He was getting he does not look good. And by the way, just as you were saying, Justice better there. Justice got to be sick that the Heat were in the finals last year after he was traded, and then the following year it's a team with Devin Booker and Frank Kaminsky. Also, was Campaign in that draft as well? Do I have that wrong? I might have that a year off.
I think he was in the second round, wasn't he?
I have no idea.
No. Campaign was like the 14th pick by the Thunder, but
Okay.
no,
he wasn't that drafted.
Frank Kaminsky didn't look good, but there was there was a one or the two times he scored there. I'm like, wow. Who was the guy guarding the screen? And of course, it was Bobby Portis.
That's that's a topic of discussion nearing the end of the show. We're gonna have to wrap on that, but I do want to touch on the coaching because I've been the first to slander Budenholzer every single chance I get. I want to give credit where it's due. He did a very good job yesterday, and honestly, in Game 2 as well. I think Game 1. He was a deer in headlights. There was no business with Budenholzer coaching that game. But Game 2 and Game 3, I think he's done a fantastic job. And honestly, I think they should have won Game 2. It's just the shot making from the Suns was just so superior that there was nothing they could do. But the Bucks have been getting better shots for the last 2 games. And the points in the paints battle has been really telling. So in Game 1, the Suns won the points in the paint battle by 2. In Game 2, the Bucks won by 26. They still lost that game by 13, I believe. And then in Game 3, the Bucks won by 14. And then the free throws made, same sort of thing, or free throws attempted. Suns won it by 9 in the first game. The last 2 games, it's been Bucks by 19 combined. So the Bucks are getting easier shots, and they're getting to the line more. Alex, we'll go to you here. Do you think this is indicative of a change in the series, or is it something that Monty Williams can kind of scheme his way around, or is this just something the Suns are going to have to overcome?
I think this is something the Suns are going to have to overcome, but I don't think that means that it's a turning point in the series. I mean, I already obviously said I give away that my pick is the Suns even still, but I just think inevitably if the team is healthy, the Bucks were going to impose their presence, and I couldn't agree with everything. I couldn't agree more with what you guys said there about Giannis and just the way that he's like imposing his will. He's a physically dominant player, and when he plays like one, when he's out there being aggressive and really just going at guys and taking advantage of dudes in space over and over and over again, he's really just like pulverizing everybody. It's pretty fun to watch, even though I'm actively rooting for the Suns because I want Chris Paul to win the title. I just think the Suns are the type of team that can survive these types of changes in a series where adjustments will happen. And even if we're not talking about necessarily schematic ones, it's just I think the decision makers they have, and also the respect I have for their coach, it's like those guys will figure it out. And I think those types of guys will be able to kind of go at whatever type of coverage they throw out. And look, if Giannis is getting them 45 or 42 every game, yeah, it's going to be really hard to beat. I'm still very skeptical about the rest of the guys on the Bucks.
Marco?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Alex on all those points there. The main thing that I want to see the Suns try to change a lot is their, I don't know, the type of drop they're playing on the Giannis when he screens for either Drew or Chris Middleton. I think they're kind of caught in between on those plays. They don't know whether to help high on the screen or just kind of sag off a little lower. Because DeAndre Ayton, for as good as he's been this series, he's kind of had trouble with that. They don't know whether to keep him above the level of the screen like that. I want to see Ayton be more decisive on who he's going to guard on that play. Sometimes they have him out on PJ Tucker to keep him out of foul trouble. I don't like that at all. You're keeping him away from the play. He's not really affecting anything. You got to make sure he's in there being your anchor, because he's been like that all year. He's been one of the best rim protectors quietly throughout the whole season. So I don't like putting him just to guard a corner guy like that. That's not the type of thing. I think Monty's going to change that. He's going to make sure to keep him in the paint a little more. One thing the Bucks have done really well that I've actually really liked is the Suns like to run the high screen rule, and Jrue Holiday, he pressures up on Paul all the way to full court, but as soon as he sees a screen, he starts to back off, and as soon as that happens, he goes under it and he just automatically starts hedging up on the screen more. And
damn, was it just me or did Marcos?
No, I heard that too.
Okay, damn, Marco was making some fantastic points too. But to Taylor Marco's point, because I wholeheartedly agree with everything he was saying, and I think I kind of know where he was going with that. The Bucks are just doing a really good job of getting the Suns out of their rhythm in the offense really early on in possessions. Something that Spo has actually done a lot where they play against like the top tier guards and they maybe don't have the personnel to shut those guys down. You saw it with Steph Curry. You saw it with Trae Young. Those are the two that really stick out in my mind. But they would throw bodies at those guards early on in the possessions, make sure that the shot clock is not as long, and they'd be getting the possession started with about 17 seconds left. And that is not easy, especially when the guard has been dribbling the ball for 7 seconds going side to side rather than just getting a straight line walking past half court. That's one adjustment I think Budenholzer's done a fantastic job. And I wonder what the counter is going to be for the Suns. I think Marco was going to make a great point here, but I can't tell exactly what he was going to say. But I mean, Alex, am I crazy in saying this, that Budenholzer has outcoached Monty Williams over the last 2 games?
I don't think that's crazy to say. I don't think that's crazy to say. I think like he's done a good job of kind of sticking to his base defense while also making some smart micro adjustments along the way. And I think you and Marco both brought up some great points, and I can see Marco's back in now. So I guess I'll defer because Marco just set up that point so well. I want to make sure he hits it out. Oh, but that noise is back.
What was the last thing you guys heard?
You were saying something, and then your microphone just started like, and it kept going.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's back.
It's back?
We got to unplug and replug that mic. One day we'll get to Marco's point. One day we will.
All right.
But
what you said, by the way, about Aiden not being able to come up all the way to the screen, that part interests me because I remember I saw people comparing him to Bam after a couple of games in the finals. So that part makes me laugh just because, there's not really any type of concern with where Bam can be on the floor on defense. So
Bam is otherworldly, and people are really just taking the time of Bam not having the best first-round series to slander him while simultaneously using him to prop up another player, which is frustrating because they're both good players in their own right, great players, especially in these playoff runs that they had. But anyways, Marco, you were talking about how Drew Holiday was backing off crossing half court because somebody said high screen.
I want to actually give credit to somebody who was talking about this. I forget. I think he's a Bucks writer, Eric Neem. He works for The Athletic. Who talked about how they're making sure that the Suns aren't getting into because they're a team that plays slow as hell. So they're trying to get them to play even slower than that. So Drew Holiday is pretty much making them run the shot clock to 12 before they even get into anything, which is a thing that Mike Budenholzer actually did throughout the year. He loves putting Drew Holiday up really, really high and pressure the ball. They did that against Trae Young as well. Trae Young did a good job of not speeding up. Paul also does a good job of not speeding up. But when you only have 10 seconds on the shot clock, the Suns, they don't have very much else to run outside of just a single pick and roll. They also tried running the 4-5 that the Clippers run, which is 2 guys running a screen for Chris Paul at the top of the key for a mid-range jumper. The Bucks have just done a really good job of switching that action and not allowing Chris Paul to get anywhere close to the mid-range. And whenever he does, he has a pretty good contest. And yesterday he was making them, but it was just hell for him to run any sort of offense.
Yeah, because you can't take away everything from the Suns offensively. They're just dynamic and they have so many different facets and layers to their offense. If you're the Bucks, do you just live with the mid-range game from Booker and CP3? Because, I mean, as great as they are, that still is going to be a much more difficult shot than, say, Ayton in the paint or catch-and-shoot look for Mikal Bridges. Maybe Jay Crowder you'll live with, but those elite shooters like Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, maybe you're not as comfortable with them shooting those threes as you are with CP3 and Book taking those shots where, I mean, analytically speaking, it's probably going to be beneficial to have them live or die by those shots, especially when you're contesting them. It's not like they're wide open anymore. They've gotten some pretty good contests because of the way that they've adjusted their drop when they do drop or their switches when they have Giannis at the 5. So if you're the Bucks, is that almost the shot that you want them to keep taking? Or I feel like it's kind of a dilemma for the Bucks. Like, what do you want the Suns to try to do? Because they're good at it, but at the same time, it's still the best thing that the Bucks are at defending.
See, that's interesting. And you guys talking about this adjustment, it's like it honestly makes the most sense. And again, to give credit to Bud here, it's like they have 2 again, to go back to their shot creators, their decision makers, they have two guys there that you're trying to pressure. And if you're like, to your point, you're getting them into shots that normally they're good at taking when it comes to Chris Paul and Devin Booker, who are legitimately 3-level scorers who can shoot from anywhere along the floor pretty much. If you're pressuring those guys into taking contested versions of the shot where they're expending a lot of energy just to get to those spots rather than, kind of walking up to them in rhythm and getting a nice shot from one of their favorite spots there, I think it is kind of just the way that you got to go with it if you're the Bucks defense, especially with the personnel that you have there. I think you just got to trust them to not necessarily win their matchups, but bother them enough one-on-one so you don't have to have other guys helping off, because that's where the other guys that they have, I think, become a lot more dangerous when they have easy reads to make out there if somebody's unnecessarily helping. I think Middleton, I think Drew Holiday, obviously, those guys, like if they're assigned those roles, they can do it, but it's just a lot of energy to expend. And I think at this point, it's a worthwhile one to do just because you really want to throw the Suns off their game and off their rhythm. And I think that does kind of get them out the rhythm. But I don't know how you guys feel about that being something you do for the whole game, or maybe you switch it up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you can do it for the whole game. You definitely have to switch it up based on who you have, specifically at center. Whether it's Portis or Lopez, I think it's more difficult to do those kinds of things. But if you have Giannis in, then maybe you live with a lot more of the things that you were doing early on in the series, because Giannis just makes up for so many different things when he's playing the 5 defensively. But I mean, it worked in game 3. They got the Suns took about 6 less catch and shoot threes than they normally take in the playoffs, which is honestly a big number for a team that's as efficient as they are. So, yeah, I'm very interested to see how they go about it. Marco, do we have any different thoughts here?
No, I think you're right. It's like all about personnel. And if you're going to put Bobby Portis out there to switch, you're writing your own death certificate at that point. So, yeah, it's all about the personnel.
Yeah, it's Bobby Portis. I actually do like what they did with him offensively, though. I can't lie. I think what the Bucks have done offensively is, one, what you said earlier, they kind of want to try to get Ayton on PJ Tucker, because once he has 1 foot out of the paint and you dribble at him, which is what Drew was doing a lot. He was dribbling at Ayton and making him make the decision, are you going to help or are you going to stay on your guy and not let the shot go up? Because Drew going at CP3 to the rim is pretty easy for him. Drew going at Devin Booker, I mean, he can finish on him. And there was one play that I thought was actually pretty telling in the first quarter. They had a play where they faked the handoff with Middleton and Giannis, and then Drew and Giannis ran a pick and roll all the way on the left side while the right side was overloaded, and Middleton had Mikal Bridges outside of the play. And then it was Booker got clipped on the screen, so it was just 2-on-1, Drew against Giannis against Jay Crowder, with Ayton trying to decide if he should help, and Ayton just froze. He didn't make a single read. He didn't help off the shooter, and he didn't help at the rim. Like, he didn't do anything there. I think the Bucks trying to get Ayton to think on the defensive end is probably their best bet, because he's a fantastic defender when things are very easy for him. Yep. But when you put him out in space, he's not Bam Adebayo. Like, that is where the difference is defensively. I wonder if that's what they continue to go with, because it worked really, really well. And then you saw when he starts thinking, he maybe starts fouling. And if Ayton fouls, this series is tilting in the Bucks' favor.
Oh, yeah. That's actually a really good point. I'm going to defer to Marco here just because I feel like I've taken up too much space with Marco coming in and out here. But the Ayton stuff, I cannot agree more. I just think he's somebody that you need to put in space, like you said, with the other side of the court cleared out, and just have him make a decision on what to do in the pick and roll. And maybe, look, with more reps, if they just keep doing it over and over, which I don't really think they have, he figures it out. But I would absolutely take that bet. Like, you got to find your holes if you're your Bucks and really exploit them until, they adjust.
The Suns tried adjusting a little. They actually tried trapping Chris Middleton. I don't know if you guys saw that. They tried trapping him and it went nowhere because he found the 4-man, whether it was Bobby or Giannis, and they were just making the right reads on that short roll. And I think they ditched it after like 3 possessions. They were like, okay, no more trapping. This isn't going to work. So if you can't be, you have to make a decision whenever Ayton's out there and when he's not out there to what kind of defense you're going to play. You can't have him, as you said, Gad, you can't have him think too much. He's a young guy. This is his first finals. He played great last game, but that defense needs to be a little better. And I think they do need to simplify a lot of that. The same way that the Bucks actually do for Brook Lopez. They don't make him do too much when he's kind of dropping or showing at the level like he is. So you have to simplify things, but also not too much to the point to where the Bucks can just dissect you pretty easily.
Yeah, it's the chess match is so fun to watch. I think that's something that's kind of gone under the radar in these finals because everybody wants the big name and they want to see the exciting games that go down to the wire, whatever. Like we haven't really had a close game down to the wire yet. But at the same time, the first 3 quarters of these games, and honestly, the beginning of every fourth quarter has been pretty exciting, at least from a basketball junkie perspective. It is really fun to see these adjustments play out and how it works and who works because they're such differing play styles. Like the Bucks they're like a sledgehammer, and then the Suns are all finesse, and it works. And they're just such a fundamentally sound team. It's been really, really fun to watch. So I guess we're kind of going to get into predictions here. Alex, we know you're going with Suns in 6. Marco, I believe you said Suns in 4. I said Suns in 5. That's basically null and void at this point. I'll rule out Suns in 5. Honestly, I personally don't see that happening. But who do you have winning the series and why?
Me, I'm still gonna go with Suns. I guess I'll have to go 6 now since 4 is off the table. I went for the gamble. I didn't put any money on it. That's for damn sure. I'm not doing that. But I'm going to stick with Suns in 6. I think the Bucks have shown me enough to where they're going to stretch the series out. But I just feel like the Suns are going to figure this stuff out eventually. I think they'll make the right adjustments. I think they're going to start hitting their shots more. Devin Booker has quietly been not that good besides 2 quarters of game 2. So I think he's going to bounce back the same way he bounced back in the Lakers series. And I think they're going to take care of business, probably close it out in Milwaukee, which would be pretty fun.
Ooh, winning in Milwaukee. That's interesting. To your point about Booker, I think he's just done a lot of forcing shots, similar to what Jrue Holiday's been doing the entire playoffs, where you're like, okay, I know you can take this shot, and Devin Booker's obviously a better shot maker than Jrue Holiday, but you don't have to take this shot yet. Like, keep working the offense. You have Chris Paul, you have DeAndre Ayton, you have incredible role guys in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, like all these other dudes campaign that they can hoop. They can play. You don't have to force up a bad shot on Chris Middleton or Jrue Holiday 17 feet from the rim just because that's the shot that you're comfortable with. I think that's part of the maturing process. And like you said, I think once it slows down for him a little bit, he'll be totally fine. This might be a little bit of a hot take, but I don't think the Bucks lose a game at home. I think it's going to be Suns in 7. I think the Bucks are going to win on Wednesday. And I think the adjustments that the Bucks have made, it wasn't so much we're going to make this move and then Monty make the next move. Like kind of to the question I asked Alex earlier, I think it's something that the Suns are going to have to live with. And I trust their shot making to win 2 more games in the series. But I think the Bucks are going to have an easier time getting their offense, if that makes sense. I think their off-ball movement has been honestly fantastic the last 2 games. They're using those like baseline cuts and whatnot where you're getting the wall built and then Giannis is making that read to get it behind the wall, and it's Bobby Portis or Pat Connaughton or anybody just getting that wide open look at the rim. I'm very intrigued to see how this series plays out. Maybe it's just I want to see as much basketball as possible, but I'm going Suns at 7. It's going to be a great Finals MVP performance for Chris Paul. I think he gets it done in Game 7 with like a 30-piece or something. But I think the series goes a distance. If I'm being completely honest with you,
I hope you're right.
From the Bucks is I think this series should be 2-1 in the Bucks' favor, but obviously the Suns just had that one game, and I think that one game where they hit 23s is going to be the deciding factor. So,
I think if I was the Suns, I would drop and just let Jrue Holiday shoot a bunch of floaters. No more of Giannis getting a bunch of rolls to the rim.
Well, this is what should happen.
That pick and roll defense needs to be solid, man.
People freeze up with Jrue Holiday. Like, he actually was running the pick and roll with a lot of pace yesterday, and he wasn't forcing much. There was a few stupid passes here and there and maybe some not great shots, but much better than he's been playing throughout the entire playoffs, in my opinion. Like, he looked like he kind of figured things out, which is good because they need him to do that. He's a good guy, and they gave up a ton to get him. I don't want Jrue Holiday to fall flat on his face. He's been playing great defense, by the way. But we, obviously, as Heat fans, have been watching a ton of international basketball, whether it's Omar Yurtseven, all of Team Nigeria, or Bam. It's been fun to watch. So, Marco, you've been live tweeting this entire international basketball run from 5 on the Floor account, whether it's highlights, whatever it may be. From all that you've seen from international basketball so far, and I guess we'll go around the horn on this, what is the biggest takeaway from a Heat perspective that you've gotten from these international games?
The biggest one is Precious is still that same crazy athletic dude we saw last year, but now he's playing in a system that's not a system that's allowing him to do these things, but his mind isn't so weighed down by the expectations of being on a team that's trying to contend for a title. He's finally had some time to grow his game. He didn't have a training camp last year. He didn't have a G League opportunity. He didn't have a summer league, all that stuff last year. So now he has an off season to work on that. And now you're watching, the fruits of the labor pay out right now. And that's my biggest takeaway is watching. Last year you saw his feet get really heavy in certain situations. He would make a ton of mental mistakes. He wasn't sure of himself. That was the biggest thing I remember. Now he seems more sure of himself, and it's pretty great to watch, actually. KZ and Gabe, they've had some moments here and there, but I think Precious, overall, he seems like a different kind of guy now. I don't know if you guys see it. He's shooting threes today, if you guys saw. He actually shot some threes last game. And the form's not bad. That's actually something I want Bam to do, is take that above the break three. We actually talked about that on a recent stream with Alex and Ethan and Greg, where that opens up a lot for your offense whenever you can shoot that above the break three. And I'm glad that Mike Brown has allowed Precious to do that, work through a bunch of his mistakes, because these guys are young, but they're putting up like great numbers against the top 4 teams ranked in FIBA, which is the U.S. at number 1 and Argentina at number 4, and they blew out Argentina. And you watch these guys; they play together, they play hard, they're quick, and they're athletic as hell. Nigeria is my favorite team. That doesn't have Bam on it for this qualifying for the Olympics. I'm sorry, and I hope they medal. And I love watching Precious. Pretty much, he's an athletic freak, and I can't wait to watch him at Summer League. See how much even he grows from there, and how much Spo takes from what Mike Brown has given him, because he's given him a lot of free reign out there to do what he wants, similar to what Bam did in his Summer League days, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it actually does remind me a lot of Bam at Summer League. I wonder how much Summer League Precious is going to get, because, their Olympic run might go the distance too. They look really, really good. I'm not ruling out anything for Nigeria right now. With that said, Alex, what is one of your major takeaways from these international games so far?
I was deciding whether or not to go, with Precious or KZ, so I guess I'm just going to bundle them together, because there's no topping Marco's analysis of somebody who's just done the work and watched all these games minute by minute. I think the KZ and Precious stuff makes me feel good about where they're at in their trajectory, despite not having all this experience that guys usually in their situation would have had by now. I think this experience is going to be good for them, like Marco was talking about, to get them kind of out of their heads and just to start thinking better about themselves and what they're capable of accomplishing, because both of those guys, I've always been a little bit higher on Precious, and he's made me feel better about him, just because, again, like Marco said, he's an athletic freak, and I think that stuff is for real. And once he figures out the mental stuff, he's going to be a pretty nice player to have in your rotation, whether it's on the Heat or elsewhere. And KZ, the stuff is, I wanted to bundle it together because I think both of them can be plug and play guys if they figure some stuff out. I think easier than we would have thought at the end of the season. I think both of those guys, like, for different reasons. You have KZ, who might be the second tallest guy on the team. He has some great measurables, and I think he was pretty good on defense when he did play this year, when he wasn't fouling. He wasn't great, but he was pretty good, and I think it's gotten better and better as time's gone by. I think it looked good in this game as well too. Like, he's still kind of not great at all on offense. I'm just hoping he figures out some basic stuff that I think won't be too hard for him after some time. Like, it's a lot of just set shooting and figuring out when to take a set shot or to attack if there's a lane open, or to hit the extra pass. I think that's stuff that, a Stanford kid can figure out after a little bit. So I just like the idea of both of them being able to be incorporated into a rotation, even though we know that both of them are probably not going to be in that 10-man rotation from the season to start. Like if I had to guess, if they're both on the roster, no, just like towards the end of the season, they weren't. Like Precious was out for Dedmon. If there's a backup 5 there, I would imagine them to be in the roster. I mean, in the rotation ahead of Precious, and then whatever they happen to do with their front court, like KZ and Precious are going to have to play for their minutes, and I think they're going to be plug and play guys next year. But I feel good about them, and like if you want to go all defense lineups, these are the types of guys you could throw out too. I just think they have some stuff there that you want to look into.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we've seen a lot, specifically from Precious. I just think the biggest development is it looks like he's more comfortable playing on the perimeter than he was last year. Last year, if you told me he was getting minutes on the perimeter, I just would not have believed you. He was a 5 trapped in a 4's body. Right now, he kind of looks like he might be growing the skill set of a 4 in a 4's body. Like, I don't think he should end up becoming a 5. I don't think he's that type of strength per se, where he can kind of play against those bigger 5s. But I think as a 4, he can absolutely be a terror defensively because he's really switchy. You saw it against Argentina today. He got switched out onto a guard on the perimeter at one point, and he just trapped him in the corner, and there was nowhere for that guy to go. He ended up taking a horrible shot that I think hit the bottom of the front rim. So
clamped up Bradley Beal in the U.S. game too.
Well, yeah, no, that too. But I mean, he's just looked so much better. I'm really happy with the way that Precious has been developing, and I'm excited to see this run for Nigeria because he's a starter, KZ's a starter, Gabe Vincent is a starter, and they're getting heavy minutes. They're running a 14-man rotation right now, but as the games get better and the games are closer and they're more high stakes, you're going to see Gabe, KZ, and Precious in high leverage moments, and that's more so than anything what they need. They need those reps to see how they look, whether it's on ball, offensively, off ball, playing help defense, playing on ball defense, whatever it may be. You're going to see all those facets of their game, especially because Mike Brown is running a really similar offensive system to what the Heat already run. I think that is also a huge development.
So many handoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just handoffs and pin downs, and it's working. Like, their offense is fun. It's athletic. They are passing the ball all the way around. They're playing great defense. They get out in transition. I'm really enjoying watching this Nigerian team, and I hope they go really far in the Olympics for the Heat's sake because, I mean, people are seeing Precious on a global stage. He blocked Kevin Durant with his offhand. That is a huge deal, honestly. Yeah. That doesn't happen on accident. Like, that is a great defensive play from a player that I think ultimately could end up becoming a great defensive player. And the flashes he's showing right now are really, really, really exciting. I guess the question that I have based upon what I've seen from Precious is, Alex, you said you think he might not be in the rotation. Do you think the Heat can count on him, at least in the regular season? Because, in the playoffs, the rotation shrinks. They're probably going to go 8 deep. I only care about the top 8 guys. But if you're talking about a cost-controlled backup 4, I don't think he should be the backup 5. Do you think Precious can be that guy for the Heat next year?
See, that's tough, man. And I don't really disagree with a lot of the stuff you said I think in theory, Precious at his best is going to be somebody you can play at both positions in the front court, whether it's 4 or 5, depending on the rest of the guys in the lineup, depending on the rest of the guys that you just have on the team and whether or not, what's the best spot for him. I think when you're talking about the context of the Heat, it's like, it's going to be tough to play him at the 4 if you don't just have a whole lot of shooting around him, I think. And they don't really have they're not going to have another spacing big, I don't think, that's going to be next to him in the front court off the bench.
Hypothetically, let's say Dedmon comes back. Could you play him with Dedmon? Because Dedmon's at least comfortable being out there.
I think you could try it. I wouldn't be opposed to trying it. Like, I think that's if you can figure something like that out, that's a great tool to have, and that's something you should try in the regular season. But I would just be skeptical that it would work just because, like, I think the defense would be more than happy to let Dedmon and Precious shoot it if they're open, right, and just kind of prove me wrong. And I think both of those guys can take wide open set threes, but if you're the Heat, how many times do you want to do that? How many times are they just going to pass out of it and kind of run to a second action that they're more used to doing with less time on the clock? So again, I'm not opposed to doing it. You can kind of cater the right lineups around them to try it, right? But I don't know. I don't think there's an easy answer with Precious. I wouldn't be mad if he was the backup 5, if they just kind of evaluated him on his own after this run and just okay, we think he's a little bit further along than he was last season. I still think he can get a little bit stronger, but I think he already looks physically bigger than he did.
For sure.
And so I honestly, I could go either way about it. I've already said in the past that for when it comes to the Heat's free agent resources, I would rather that like the front court is the stuff that they spend the least on. Not that it doesn't matter, but just I'm more focused on the shot creation talent. And so that leaves, as a result, the front court being the thing that you spend less on. So if it just happens to be, okay, you get some fours there that whether, to replenish the front court and then Precious is your backup five, I'm cool with that. I'm good with that too.
Yeah, I think there's going to need to be 3 players that are bigger / stronger than Precious on the roster next year. You can chalk Bam as one of them, Dedmon is one of them, and then another guy who I think should be the either backup or starting 5. I don't care what they are in the rotation.
Markieff Morris?
Well, in that scenario, I guess Precious would be the 5. I just wonder because a lot of teams don't really have that floor spacing backup 5. It's more so like the post presence where it's just really annoying basketball for about 12 to 15 minutes.
I like him next to JaMychal Green.
Okay, yeah. JaMychal Green, he can be your backup 5/4. And then now we're talking like Precious and JaMychal Green defensively. That is a duo that I like.
Precious and Ibaka, if he was healthy.
Yeah, if Ibaka was healthy, that's like the ideal fit next to either Bam or Precious. But I just think Precious, the weapon that he is defensively, you invested a first-round pick into him. At some point, you have to find a spot for him in the rotation. And I think what he's shown so far is at least taking steps towards deserving that spot. We'll see what happens for the rest of the summer. But if he keeps showing these flashes, I think it's a legitimate conversation to have. Should Precious be in the top 10 guys to start the season? Because he's got the defensive potential to do it.
I think the more we talk about it, the more I'm kind of going in that direction. Just because I can't wait to see the likes of and we've talked about it for kind of everybody else, all the main guys in the team, but for the likes of Precious and KZ having a good point of attack defender, if they do happen to address that, right? Let's say they do get a Kyle Lowry, and like I would like to see, minutes with him and Jimmy, for example, and just seeing like what type of stuff they could do on defense, just because where they don't have to be constantly be helping for everybody else and just having to make up for the lack of defense along the perimeter for the rest of the roster. Like really, bro, the fact that they got to a top 8 defense, top 7 defense, whatever it was, with pretty much no point of attack defense. Defenders. Yeah, really. Like, and I give credit to Iguodala. I give credit to Ariza. I give credit to Dedmon for being okay, but those guys are not great defenders. They're good. They're solid, right? They're okay. They're pretty good. But the whole like perimeter defense was, I mean, come on. Like those guys tried their asses off, but it was so bad. Like Goran, Tyler, Kendrick, like those guys, you just constantly you're like climbing back from a hill every single time on defense because your point of attack is all messed up, and they constantly had to scheme around it. So if that's what I just think, like helping you get a point guard like that, it's going to help out not only the stars, but KZ and Precious too. I would love to see that, man.
I heard them last year why they were such a bad fourth quarter teams, because they were trying so hard to make up for those defensive deficiencies throughout like the first 3 quarters.
Ooh, got a comment here. Precious should be the backup 4, seeing as Iggy's not going to be here. I'm cool with it. Listen, I think Precious's development is going to steer him on the track to be a 4 as opposed to a 5. I think that's how you're going to be able to maximize the talent, both defensively and offensively, as he continues to add to his offensive repertoire. Like, I think, I mean, the name that I kind of see is like the absolute ceiling sort of comparison for Precious is Pascal Siakam, someone in that type of mold where rookie year didn't really have much. And then sophomore year, he started getting more minutes. And then, I mean, eventually the Raptors are just so great at molding talent where they got him to a place where he was not only playable, but he was a positive at the 4. And then he just turned into a star from there. I'm not saying Precious is going to become that, but I think that sort of development track is what they should aim for, as opposed to another version of Bam, which maybe there's comparisons defensively, but Bam is just so far and away better offensively in terms of running offense through him and whatnot that I think Precious would be best suited. And you also want Precious to be able to play with Bam. So if he's able to develop on the perimeter, that makes things a whole lot easier in terms of making it work offensively. You can Because if Precious develops and plays on the perimeter, then Bam develops and plays on the perimeter. I mean,
this might be like moot, considering that maybe the Raptors just asked for him in a sign-and trade for Lowry this summer, and he might not even be here. So you never know.
Which is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, it's very possible. Very,
And-
very possible.
Man, I was just trying to think of it like the comparisons you were saying, Siakam, which is an interesting one. The one that's kind of gone through my head is it's not an apples to apples one, but I feel like Precious at his best can turn into kind of some sort of a wider version of Jeremy Grant. Where,
Totally agree.
Maybe he wasn't necessarily a shooter at all when he came into the league, and he was somebody who was thought of as kind of this 3-4. Now he's a 4, but I just think Precious, when he grows into his body, he's going to be wider. So I think I'm going to think of him, just trying to imagining the type of role he's going to get as a 4-5 who can at some point maybe do attack if given the ball, can take a set shot if he's wide open, can defend multiple positions. I just think like he's got that type of talent in him. I do feel a little bit skeptical that it's going to be on the Heat, to be honest, just because they have like so little stuff that they can actually throw into trades, and they seem like they're really going to go all in. So it feels like him, Tyler, are the type of guys that are going to end up being gone, and it's kind of, that's the cost of trying to contend right away. But Precious is somebody who I really do believe in, man. Like I think his talent is that of. Like I said, I think Jeremy Grant just got paid for a reason, man. Like that type of player, to have him as a 4-5 option, that's a luxury.
Yeah, for sure. Marco, your mic is once again exploding for some reason. I don't know. That's very interesting what's going on with your mic. So I guess the last thing here before we close. So I want to talk about two things. One, is there anybody on the market, Marco, I know you wrote a piece on sort of the front court guys. Is there anybody on the market right now that you think would be worth the full taxpayer MLE, which is about $9.5 million for the Miami Heat? The full amount. Who's worth it? Not necessarily who would they give it to, because you might have to overpay for certain players. But if you look at the market right now, who is someone that you say that guy is worth almost $10 million for the Miami Heat next year?
You go with me or Alex?
Yeah. Starting with you.
Somebody actually had this question. I think it was on Heat Twitter. They had this poll up. Would you rather pay John Collins or Colin Sexton the max this summer? Or would you eventually have to pay Colin Sexton the max? I think it'd be 2 years, right? You guys had this on the pod recently. And that was a lot harder a question than I thought it would be. You would have to, I guess it would be Colin, because you'd be more down the road. And then Collins, you'd have to just do this summer. And I might get a lot of hate for this. I'd rather pay John Collins this summer. Ooh.
I hate it.
I hate saying that.
I don't hate it.
Okay, good.
Alex, you hate John Collins. You hate John Collins. It is publicized that you hate John Collins.
No, I was doing a lot of tongue-in-cheek shit. I think paying John Collins the max would be easier to swallow, just because that the fit next to Bam is something that you got to pay up for, especially if you're doing it like a long-term thing. Whereas with Sexton, it's like you have to pay him if you trade Tyler for him, more so than like I want to pay him the max. And not that I think Collins is way better than Sexton. I just think they're gonna get another high-level shot creator. That's what they're aiming for alongside. If they were to get Sexton, I don't think they would just stop there with backcourt help. So I think at some point, what if you get diminishing returns, right? Like he could still be a useful player, and I guess I kind of used a similar argument during the trade deadline for Collins, but that was more about preferring a shot creator to trade for over a power forward. But I just don't think Sexton is the shot creator. Like Lowry is more the type of guy that I'm more willing to pay the max, not only because he's way better, but just because that's the type of guy they need. And so I'm wondering, maybe you get more diminishing returns from Sexton in the backcourt than Collins in the front court. You know what I'm saying?
Who has the higher upside on defense in that terms? Or who has more
I
use?
I think John Collins.
Collins has the upside on defense. I think offensively, it's not particularly close. I think it's Colin Sexton, because he can be maybe not your number one primary bucket getter on a championship contending team, but he can get his own bucket at will, and that is something that not a lot of players are able to do. And Collins can't do that on his own. He still needs another point guard like a Trae Young to set him up. With that said, Manny, comment.
Alex, you're my man. Is Colin Sexton that point guard that Bam needs in this offense for the Miami Heat?
Not necessarily. That's how I feel about Lowry. I would love Colin Sexton here, but I don't think of him as like
he's the cheapest without going out there and getting Lillard and one. That's why I was hoping.
Yeah, no, I'm in on the idea. I think Sexton is a good idea. That question made me think for a little bit, right? But the Sexton idea, he's still like, if you're giving up Tyler for him, it's an upgrade. He's just further along than Tyler is. He's better at offense than Tyler is right now. He's got better measurables to be kind of, I think, more competitive on defense. And I think there's already, it seems like there's some smoke behind it. It seems like he's somebody that Jimmy would love. He seems like he's somebody the Heat would love. So I'm in on the idea, but I don't think of him as the point guard that the Heat need, because they need to get a point guard next to Sexton, so that Sexton could just kind of be the scoring off guard, doing what he does well. Even not that he can't play make, but he's not the natural point guard.
Yeah, he's not going to make those easy reads that Lowry does. I mean, Lowry's
why he fits well here too, with Jimmy and Bam doing a lot of the playmaking too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, which two would you rather pair together? I'm gonna put this to you guys. Would you rather have Brandon Ingram and Lowry as a two guys you're getting, or Sexton and Lowry?
Brandon Ingram and Lowry, no question.
I think so too.
I think Brandon Ingram should be kind of like that number one target kind of guy. Marco, your microphone sounds like a boat engine once again. There we go. Yeah, I mean, if you can get Brandon Ingram, he's like that primary shot creator where he can get his own bucket, and there also is upside to be probably a better playmaker than Colin Sexton. I think Ingram's a much better playmaker than people give him credit for. Like, he's pretty good at creating for others. Just doesn't really have that much of an opportunity, and he also played with Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams this year. So it's not the easiest job in the world. He also can't really go to the paint.
He really thought that was going to work, bro. Like, unbelievable. We all knew it wasn't going to work. They really thought.
Hey, David Griffin, man, he's, I guess, absolved of blame, but that seat is going to start heating up.
I will say this, though, like, me and Adam were kind of arguing about this a little bit in the text, and that's all me and Adam do is argue, because I call everything he does 2K trades. But really, like, we're going back and forth because I was like, and we were almost talking about a similar thing, like Sexton versus Ingram. I would rather have Ingram on this team. But if you have to give up Tyler and Duncan for Ingram, I'd rather just give up Tyler for Sexton. And it does pay me.
Marco didn't like that.
Yeah, and also, by the way, just to even add to strengthen this point even more, just the trade stuff, I would rather trade Tyler than Duncan. So just off that, like, let's say it's a 1-for-1 trade, right? Like, they have to sign and trade Duncan Robinson to get Ingram, or they have to trade Tyler Hero to get Colin Sexton. Let's say that would be the scenario. I would take Sexton just because I would rather trade Tyler than Duncan for a win now team.
I get that. Like, it's totally valid. Like what Duncan Robinson does,
but it is your best asset, so it's a little bit tough to say that too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's weird with Duncan because, like, you're signing him. But are you signing him just to keep the asset, or are you signing him to keep the player and the fit alongside Jimmy and Bam, or both? Like, I think there's a bunch of different ways to look at the Duncan situation. But I just think if you're going to be hard capped, assuming you do a sign and trade, and he's going to end up taking about like 20 to 22 million of that number, it's going to be really, really tough to match from a team building perspective, because you're most likely going to have two guys that are going to be on the max. You want to add a third guy that is going to be on the max, and Kyle Lowry falls somewhere between the max and $20 million. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they approach the Duncan situation. I'm very intrigued, to say the least, to see
where that goes. Scare you guys?
Huh?
As a team that might get Duncan, did the Knicks scare you at all?
It's like, are they really going to pay Duncan enough? Is that going to be like their marquee acquisition?
Yeah, that's a weird one for them, right? It feels like they need more, but
They could use shooting, but
I could see them doing it, and I could see Duncan just going to the highest bidder. So as long as it's not something out of the Heat's range, I could see it happening. I just, I'm still just going off of what Ethan said on Floor is Yours when he said that he still thinks the most likely outcome for Duncan is New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, as long as a team that doesn't have enough space to get him and they have to do a sign and trade of some sort does it, then I'm totally cool with it. But if it's the Knicks and they use a lot of that space to sign Duncan Robinson, it really, from a team building perspective, wouldn't make too much sense for them to give him that much money for that much time, because it's going to have to be a 3+ year deal, I would imagine. I don't see why the Knicks.
Yeah, they're not a Duncan Robinson away. They're definitely not. They're not a Duncan Robinson away. Even though everybody knows their offense needs to be better, and he's somebody that will help your offense. No doubt about it. It feels like they're definitely significantly more than a Duncan Robinson away.
Yeah, maybe he helps
RJ. And Nick's marriage seems inevitable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can they do Lonzo and Duncan? Is that a good enough
space? They have 50, right? Or they can create up to 50 million. But they also have to pay Mitchell Robinson, and they have a bunch of stuff coming up soon. So I don't know if they want to tie that much money onto the books. Go all in right now when 2022 free agency is probably going to be much, 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 much more appealing for them because that free agent class is once again stacked. So I guess we never got to the mid-level exception. We kind of got to Sexton before I wanted to get to Sexton. But Marco, is there one guy that you're giving the mid-level exception to as the Heat?
We're talking full or part?
Full. I mean, you can break it up into parts, but ideally full, because I'm on the idea that you should probably break it up into parts if possible.
Max Deuce. No. If I'm going to give it full, like we talked about earlier, the ideal version of Serge Ibaka is who would I give the full mid-level to.
I agree.
Since that doesn't exist. And I think he's probably going to opt in. I actually wrote about that on the free agency preview. Check that out over on 5reasonsports.com. Plug. But I think a guy you could look at is Nick Batum. I think for
full,
if he goes for the full, that's tricky. If he can go for part of it, I think you go for it. I'm not giving Bobby Portis the full mid-level. No, I'm sorry. If he's going to be probably the backup 5, I'm not giving it to Bobby Portis. I think I'd rather give it to Nick Batum if I'm giving it to either Portis or Batum. But I don't think there's a realistic guy out there for the full mid-level that I'm comfortable with outside of Nick Batum, really. And even then, and I love Nick Batum as a player. He was really awesome last year. But I think if it's part, I think yes. But full, that's going to be shakier. But you're not really in a position to be picky at this point.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. But I guess if I had to give somebody the full mid-level, I already said him before, and then on another shows, JaMychal Green. I think he'll be a great fit, whether as a starter or as a bench player. Maybe it's a little bit of an overpay. I would like to, I'm at the same mind as you guys. I would like to split the mid-level amongst a couple guys just because I think they need the front court depth. They need some toughness there. So I like Batum. I do want them to be I don't know if it's an aesthetic thing or not. I just feel like they need to be a little bit more physical. So I just think of Batum as the skinny, wiry dude who is skilled and can absolutely help them. And again, agreed with Marco, they can't be picky. If I just had a preference, if they could split it between JaMychal Green and another, quote unquote tough 4, that would make me happy. And because I thought at first when you asked, I thought you said backcourt, huh?
Blake Griffin.
Hey,
that would probably be full mid-level.
He shut me the hell up. I thought he was cooked. And I wouldn't hate that either. I would not hate that. Look, PJ Tucker, man, I'm still a fan of him. It's I know. Yeah, I know. I still think they could use, especially on a team that is just so small at every other position, they could use a guy who can play up. That's kind of my thing. I want some physicality down there. If you could somehow do Ariza, Tucker, JaMychal Green, I would love that front, that off court. That off season. But I thought when you asked the question originally, I thought you said backcourt. So I was already going through those options. And
no. I think the mid-level, from what we've heard, based upon the reporting from Greg, Ethan, and Adam, the mid-level is most likely going to be allocated towards the front court. I may have mispronounced it, but yeah, I think it's going to be the front court. I agree with you guys. Montrezl Harrell, personally, I wouldn't do it. I don't think he's going to end up in Miami. But it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see where they go with the mid-level. I'm with you guys. I think JaMychal Green would be a good option. Maybe Rudy Gay. Maybe they go for someone who's more athletic, younger. That would also be pretty welcome. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting. Anyways, we're coming up to an hour here. So, once again, Marco, thank you. Alex, thank you. Manny, in the background, thank you. And the people in the comments, thank you. Ariel, feel better. We'll be back next week. Play the video, Manny.
Oh, Canada.